All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the How to Hunt Deer podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dan Johnson, and then as you will notice here shortly, Jason is not with us today. He just had a baby, I believe last week or the week before, and he is doing daddy and husband duty. So we're missing him today, but we gotta, I don't know if I'm supposed to share this, but I'm going to. His wife has had some complications, some like postpartum or post-birth complications, and she's kind of been in and out of the hospital trying to, I believe it's called preeclampsia or something like that. I know that it's fairly common, I guess, for some women who've just had babies to go through some of this stuff. But what I'm getting at is that's why he can't be here today. So we are going to send a huge shout out for him and his household and his wife to get better. Hopefully things become more smooth in the next couple weeks. Hopefully your wife gets better. So good vibes and prayers your way. So that's why Jason isn't with us today. But before we get into the rest of the episode, I want to send a huge shout out to a couple companies here. Number one, I want to send a shout out to Code Blue Scents. They have real and synthetic deer urines. They have scent elimination products. They have like the Rope-A-Dope Mock Scrape Kit that both Jason and I really love to mess around with. They have the body washes, the detergents, things like that. So go check out Code Blue Scents at codebluescents.com. Discount code. What is the discount code? It is HTH20 for 20% off. So go check that out. And then next on the list, what's next on the list? Reveal trail cameras, right? I want to send a huge shout out to Reveal trail cameras. And the reason that I'm talking about them today is because I've had another kind of podcast that has kind of fallen through at the moment. And I'm in the process of kind of rebranding it and rebuilding it up. So I'm going to send a huge shout out to them. If you guys are looking for, in my opinion, one of the best cellular trail cameras in the game, go check out tacticam.com/cameras, and you can download the Reveal app anywhere that apps can be downloaded. So go check that out. All right. We got to do, I was kind of debating on what I really wanted to talk about today. And for me, I'm in the process of rehabilitating my body for the hunting season, right? And not necessarily for the hunting season, but just for life in general. And I wanted to take a opportunity here, at least part of this episode, to talk a little bit about, like, dude, I get it. It's easy to drink alcohol and it's easy to be lazy. I don't know any other way to say that, right? And I want to talk a little bit about some of the best hunting seasons that I've ever had, where I was able to really play the chess match with the deer that I was trying to chase, right? Whether that's a big buck or, just trying to fill the freezer at times. But I was raised and I cut my teeth on deer hunting in a very mobile manner. And that meant lots of moving around, right? And there were some seasons where it was easier for me than others. And the direct correlation with that is how well I trained my body, or how physically fit I was, or how healthy I was leading into that season. And so there were a couple seasons back in the day when, I'll be honest, dude, I was fat. I was slow. I did not have any conditioning. I was eating a lot. I didn't have a good diet. Maybe I was doing some weightlifting, but zero cardio. And so getting my heart rate up and preparing for some Western hunts that I had gone on, really helped me into that deer season. And so this isn't rocket science, what I'm about to say. It is simply this: the better you feel the healthier you are, the lighter you are, and I know there's some big boys out there who are being like, oh, you don't need to be physically fit to kill a whitetail. No, you do not. Nope, you don't at all. You can go climb in your ladder stand, and you know, you can climb in your ladder stand and you can pop your rifle out and you can go fill the freezer or shoot big bucks that way. That's fine. I'm not saying that. What I'm getting at is if your options are, I can only afford one tree stand, or I'm limited to public land, and the rules and regulations on this public land say that I can't leave tree stands overnight, or I can't get into or I gotta take a long walk back in there. And what happened was, on those years when I had to do that, the decision for me to do that when I was bigger and not conditioned was a harder decision. And maybe I said to myself, well, I'm not going to go back that far, or I'm not going to take the big swing J hook in that would allow me to, to get into some of these spots where I knew the deer were at. My physical fitness limited me and my brain from making those types of harder decisions, I guess you would say. But on the years where I was really physically fit, let's see, between 2018 to 2000 and up till recently, when I started making a commitment to go on a lot of these Western hunts, especially every year I go to South Dakota, dude, you gotta be in shape to go do that. And I don't mean like Cameron Haynes running through the mountains shape. That dude's a savage. But I'm talking about you gotta be able to commit to 1, 2, 3 drainages or hills to get back and look where these animals are. So the second that I started doing that, my mindset also shifted. I had the body and the conditioning to get in there and my brain just automatically made the decision like, oh, carry my tree stand back a mile, and cross a creek and go up and down these big hills. Yeah, it kind of sucked, but my body was in shape enough to where it was an easy decision for me to go and do it. And then when I got back there, I had good success, right? Even on the private farms that I hunt. Some of these places are big enough where, I need to micromanage some of my tree stands, and nothing sucks worse than knowing you have to move your tree stand, but not having the stamina to do it. And so like you're getting into day 5, 6 of your rut hunt, or you're tired because you had to coach a basketball game, or you were at a wrestling tournament all day, or whatever the case is, or you were at a pumpkin patch with your kids. And then it's like, God, I'm exhausted, but I know I need to get in there and move some stuff around. And then you make the decision not to do it. And then what happens? All the deer movement goes by where you would have been, where you should have been. And so it's just a matter of like what you're looking for. If you're looking to maybe just run into a doe group, learn how to hunt deer that are close, that's fine. But if you really want to be like, this is a no-brainer. They've been talking about this since I started podcasting 12 years ago, right? When I was the co-host of the Wired to Hunt podcast, we talked about being mobile and shifting. And dude, even before that, back in 2006, when we were filming, that's when it all started for me, getting mobile roughly around 2006, maybe a little bit before that, where I understood, and I had some people tell me, dude, it's just like, if you're not seeing deer, you got to move, dude. If you're not having deer within shooting range, you got to move. You got to get closer to the deer movement, especially if you're bow hunting, right? Gun hunting, you might have a little bit more stretch, but in that October timeframe, that early November timeframe, when you're trying to get close to a specific group of animals, man, there's only one way to do it, and that's move if you're just watching. And so that kind of led me to like taking a little bit better care of my body and my diet, is so that I could get closer to big bucks. Like that's what I that stage, I went through that stage from 2006 to probably 2022, 23 until it started fading away. And my kids became old enough to where now I think a lot of my focus is wanting to get my kids into, get my kids into hunting. But, yeah, man, just having the ability and the energy to move a tree stand when you needed to. I can remember, man, I had a buddy I was hunting with. This would have been 2014 or 13 or something like that. I didn't get a buck in 13 or 14 because I was going after like a couple specific deer. But I can remember being exhausted. I mean, just exhausted from the grind of getting up, like moving tree stands and stuff. And I knew I needed to move my tree stand like 15, 15 yards. Really, that's what I did. So I took everything down in the middle of the day. In the morning hunt, after the morning hunt, I took everything down. I moved it 15, 20 yards, put it back up, and then I sat there the rest of the day. And it was it was brutal to do at the time because I had no energy, and I did it. And that particular day didn't work out. But was it the next morning? Yeah, it would have been the next morning. I killed my buck, and that was in 2012. So, no, yeah, 2012. I did that, and then once you have that positive interaction with moving your tree stands and all of that, and actually the diet plays a huge role in that as well. You just keep doing that, right? And so why is diet important for me? One thing that I knew, like when I started getting older, like in my early 30s, and I know that to like a 45-year-old now looking at it and going saying, hey, 30, 35 years old is not dead, definitely not old. But I could sense a change in my body somewhere around 37, right? And so here's what I started doing, because I can remember in the afternoon hunts, like I would leave the woods and I would go to a gas station and I would crush like apple pies and candy and pop. And then I would go back out to the woods. I'd feel slow. I'd feel tired because that sugar hit me. And then I'd crash and I'd want to fall asleep in the tree stand. And so I've learned to not do that anymore. Like if I'm going to eat a whole bunch of sugar, I'm doing it after the afternoon hunt, like in the before bed, right? And so what I've learned is like the diet plays a huge role in my awareness in the woods, my ability to move throughout the landscape, and take the harder path if I need to. There was a period of time where I was chasing this buck. I can't remember what years it was. It would have been like 2013 through 2000 and probably 17, maybe somewhere like that. This really wide, short tine, tons of tines buck. And he was in a river bottom. And he was bedded up in a strip of timber that you just couldn't walk to. You couldn't walk to because in order for me to access it, I had to get creative. So I had to like drop down into a river it was a river, a big creek, a small river, and walk the bank along it fairly close to where these deer were bedded, loop all the way around it, hop up into it. And we had to do that. And we didn't know if we were going to come back to that tree stand. And so we were taking that tree stand down. And this was probably, man, I want to say like a half a mile. It was a half a mile. It was longer than that. It was way longer than that. It would have been like I'll just say conservatively 3/4 of a mile just to get there, and then another 3/4 of a mile back. And of course, we're not taking a straight line, because a straight line to that tree stand, all the deer would have saw us. They would have been spooked and they would have ran away. So we had to take a creative way in on our access route. And I'm not doing that if I'm crashing on sugar and if I'm fat as shit. I can remember our boots getting wet and us having to sit in the tree stand to let our boots dry out and our socks dry out and have like put our gloves over top of our feet because it was November. And luckily it was warm some of the days that we were doing that, but our pants were wet too because we had to cross some parts of this creek that would go over our lacrosse boots, our rubber boots, and so I wasn't doing that if I was just a fatty. And so take that how you want to take it, but for me, it's just another part of the process that I had to learn was how well I take care of myself has a direct impact of how well I do hunting in that season. And so also, I can remember back in the day when I was drinking heavy, like I just celebrated 1 year with no alcohol. But one thing that I used to do was back in my late 20s, early 30s, before I was married, you go out, you tie one on, and you don't want to get up that next day. And you want it, you definitely want to hunt. You wake up and you go, God, I wish I would have got out into the woods. That frost morning, that frost morning where you just hear the deer tromping through the woods, right? And then you maybe hear a grunt, the perfect rut morning, and you're in bed because you drank too much, right? And so I had mornings like that. And it really wasn't until I got married and had kids where a lot of that settled down. And honestly, it's like I said to myself, I want to be good at deer hunting. So I put a lot of time into getting good at deer hunting. And when you do that, it's not just a strategy thing like, hey, I want to learn the thermals and the wind direction and how they work through terrain and what a bedding area looks like. Yes, all that's important, but you got to make it out to the woods first in order to do that. And that's where like I made it a 365 day a year passion of mine where I would do the shed hunting and I would run the trail cameras and we didn't always have cell cameras. So those cell cameras were SD card cameras or film cameras. And I would every 2 weeks go out into the woods and check battery levels and check SD cards. So it's there's a lot of moving and shaking that went into it. And then of course, after shed season, it's postseason scouting and you're doing a little bit of that, while you're shed hunting. And then you're asking for permission. You weren't able to like look up a phone number or a property owner on a digital app, right? You had a plat book and you had telephones that you had to use to call people and say, hey, or knock on their door. You couldn't just look their telephone number up. So, it was just a little bit more moving and shaking. And I just felt like if I had a better body, and what I mean by that is not aesthetics, obviously, because I'm an old piece of shit now, but, but like from an aesthetic standpoint, you have not an aesthetic standpoint, but from just a physical fitness, dude, I noticed that when I carried a lower body weight, I was more mobile. When I was eating healthier, I was more mobile. And when I was more mobile, then I had better success. And so, last year with my knee, I was unable to like drag deer out of the woods. And so I had to call someone to help me do it. So outside of that, dude, I don't want to have to rely on other people to help me drag a deer. I can remember, man, what year was it? I want to say, was it 14? No, my daughter was born in 13. So it was even before that. It would have been like 2011 or something like that. Or it was like late 2000s and I was just a drinker, right? I just drank it. And then I had to, Tony Peterson from Meat Eater tells the story about like dragging a deer out of the swamp and basically having a heart attack, because he was so out of shape and he was drinking a lot. And that's exactly, if you've ever had to drag a deer uphill by yourself and you're completely out of shape, holy shit, dude, it sucks. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So I didn't do it anymore. And so that's kind of where I was at with this. And so I wanted to just be like, it's not necessarily, especially if you have the side by sides and the wenches and stuff like that. But if you're a public land hunter, man, or you are you don't have the luxuries that some people do, man, it just helps to be in shape. It helps to be in shape. So shout out. Anyway, What else do I want to talk about? For some, like, I don't know if you guys like what you guys know about me, but one thing that has changed the game for me is access routes throughout the course of my life. And I don't know how much further I'm going to get into this today because I really want to have a conversation with Jason about this summer. But when I started seeing, we've talked about this. I know we've talked about this, getting off the field edges, right? And sometimes field edges is all a guy has. That's great. Get out. You got to make the best of whatever situation you have. But the thing that has helped me is access routes and not hunting field edges. Those are two things that I very rare, like that's one thing that I very rarely do anymore is hunt a field edge. Maybe I hunt into the timber in a terrain feature where I can see a field edge, or maybe, when the leaves are off the tree, I can see into, the field edge. But one thing that, I move out of the tree, out of the tree line, and I move into the timber. And when you do that, you have to have better access routes. And so one thing that I've really focused on almost the entirety of since 2006 and into today is how to get to my tree stands with the least amount of pressure put on the properties that I hunt. And for example, I have this new farm and I can only access it through one gate corner. Well, now the farmer bought a little bit more land, and so I have a little bit more creativity on my access routes. But what I'm getting at is the ability to, like, be creative with your access routes, identify deer movement, and know when you can and cannot go in, right? And so I have this newer farm that I have. The deer come into it in the mornings and then they leave it in the afternoons. And so really what it is it's a daily bedding area. And so I have found out that if I'm going to go deep into the timber, I need to do it in the morning in the dark. And then all the deer come back to me. And if I'm going to hunt a bedding area, this is the thing, like, dude, I absolutely hate hunting all day. But one of the things that I have kind of realized is that I need to, I'm going to probably have to sit all day to get close to some of this deer movement. And it sucks when you realize that, like, because what you don't want is me to go in the morning, I'm down in this bedding area or downwind of this bedding area. And then all of a sudden, all these deer flood into it. And I say to myself, well, I want to get out of here. But if I get out of here, then I'm going to be bumping deer. I'm going to be like, deer movement is not going to be there for me in the afternoons when I come back to it, or I try to flank that position or something like that. It's not going to work. And so I had to realize that access is important, and it's not just important for every hunt. It's also, you have to break it down by what the deer are doing in the mornings and in the afternoons. Because a tree stand, for example, that tree stand that I was just exactly talking about, if I went and tried to get into it, even on the best winds and I had the best access route leading into it, I'm bumping deer out of that bedding area immediately. And then it ruins the afternoon hunt for me. And so I have to kind of figure out the best possible, strategy for me on those access routes. And that's one thing you kind of learn for when you hunt and you identify deer movement and you hunt a property. For as long as I've hunted some of these properties, you understand the deer movement. You understand where they bed, why they bed there, and how you can get in and out of these places. Now, some of these places, I can get really creative by taking a waterway or low terrain, or walking through a thick portion of the property, knowing that they can't see me and knowing that my thermals are doing one thing and my wind direction is doing something as well. And so it's very important to be able to observe and identify that stuff. And for me, if I don't hunt, if I decide not to hunt all day, well, then I need to change tree stands. And what am I willing to do? Am I willing to bump a whole bunch of deer off of the property and potentially start to slowly move that doe group off the property? I don't want that, right? So I don't want to bump deer. And so, especially when you have limited access, and the example there would be somebody who has, let's say, a peninsula, right? Where, for example, the big farm that I have there, it's bordered by this little river, and then it's surrounded by other landowners. So I can only come into it from the east. Well, that means I have to be creative in my access routes to get in and out of there. Why? Because I don't want to bump deer. I don't want to bump deer. And one thing that I learned very early on hunting that particular property is it's almost better for me to drive my truck closer to where I want to hunt than to walk and let my scent cast through the timber. Because usually what happens is, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but the south winds on this one farm, they just dump off into the timber, the fingers. And then, especially if I'm going to hunt this particular back bedding area that's in a river bottom, it's just like a peninsula of trees that's really thick and nasty. And so I've learned that if I drive my truck closer, the deer don't get as spooked as much as me walking through the timber. And that's the same thing on the other farm that I hunt, is if I take an e-bike in, dude, they just look at me. Even if they're standing in the field, they just look at me, versus a guy walking through the pasture. They stop, they flag, they run, and then they snort for 24 straight hours. It's difficult. So, I think that's it, man. I think that's all I really wanted to touch base on really quick, was the health aspect of being a hunter. Like, instead of a sugary snack, maybe get some protein, like some meat sticks. I always bring deer meat with me when I go hunting, so that I have some protein, and it doesn't give you that big sugary rush, but it gives you more energy throughout the day. I also am a fan of these things called grinds. They look like chewing tobacco pouches, but it's coffee grinds. And so I'll pop one or two of those in for an afternoon hunt or a morning hunt, and that way I don't have to drink a cup of coffee, and it gives me a little boost that way. That's not a sugar crash. And then it's more of a level energy boost than big spikes. And then being mobile and creative with my access routes, those are two things that help me stay in. They give me the energy to move my stands, and then the creativity I need to move my stands around and be mobile in, because sometimes we all know we've been there, dude. It's like, dude, I needed another 5 yards or another 10 yards. Move your tree stand, right? Be mobile. So that's how we're going to shut it down. I don't want to get too deep into any of these other topics, because I feel like I want Jason in to be a part of that. So shout out to all of you for taking time out of your day to listen to the How to Hunt Deer podcast. If you guys could do me a huge favor and go to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you download the How to Hunt Deer podcast, and give a 5-star review, subscribe to it. This is also on this will also be on YouTube. So go check out the How to Hunt Deer YouTube channel as well. Good vibes, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and we will talk to you when we talk to you.